buddy was? I didn't know that. I should have got a ball. Buddy was nice.
Hello?
Hey,
Welcome to
Destrroyer,
Night
how you
Shadows.
doing?
I'm
Hey, Stewart.
Fest, where the paranormal is normal,
We're just going to go and
where
roll
that
here
which
just
you
a sec.
thought you knew,
Okay.
you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, hi, everybody. Stu Best here. We got a great show tonight with Larry Taylor. Hi, Larry.
Hello, Stewart. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we got Augusto on the line, too, I think. Augusto, are you there?
Hey, Stewart. Good to be with you and Larry.
Yeah. Well, it's great to have you guys on because, you guys know what's going on in the world. Where do we start? There is so much going on, particularly over there in the Middle East. Shall we start there? Maybe?
Sure.
Absolutely.
What's going on with this Russian thing? With all this equipment, now they've got a carrier moving in to the Mediterranean area. What do you guys make of that? Are we really looking at World War III, do you think?
Oh, my gosh. Go ahead, Larry.
Well, I'll tell you what, interestingly, there is more and more Russian material, weapons, etc., moving into the Middle East. I'm really shocked. When this began, when Russia began hammering Ukraine, and then I saw the finger in the pie beginning in Syria, and the beginnings of the Russian movement into Syria. I never could have imagined the amount of military availability that Putin would place there, and it is really placed there. Now, what's just happened recently in the last few days is Russia and Turkey are really, really close at a collision point. And in the last couple of days, Turkish Navy and Ukrainian Navy has begun operating together and threatening Russia. And this may be part of some of this. Of course, Erdogan, the president of Turkey, he's trying to pull NATO in and get it into this conflict. And of course, the EU or Europe, they're not at all wanting to take on Russia. I mean, they're not at all looking towards that. And so there's a lot of trouble between France and Germany and the UK and trying to stay out of this Turkish involvement. Now, Russia has also surrounded Turkey to some degree. He's brought his submarines up into the waters of the Mediterranean. He's got, of course, the missile sites and the bombers and the planes in Syria. He's also now sent at least 5,000 special forces troops into Armenia, which is right on the Turkish border. And, of course, there's always been an explosive, I guess you could say, interchange between the history of Armenians and Turkey because of that Holocaust. Of course, Turkey denies it. But this seems to be building. And, of course, as you just mentioned, the report is that heavy aircraft carrier or that heavy carrier is being sent there now, too, from Russia. And you're talking about a lot of availability to military equipment and also nuclear. This thing is not good. It's just not good.
Well, now these subs that are going in, those are nuclear equipped, right?
They have the availability to be nuclear. And these are interesting, Stuart. NATO calls these subs that Putin just sent in, NATO refers to them as black holes. In other words, they're not really detectable until they fire something.
Oh, okay, so they're kind of like a stealth sub, like we have stealth fighters and stealth bombers.
Sure.
Augusto, Augusto, when you have this kind of troop movement, when you have this kind of equipment being moved in, the logistics of it alone, would that not tend to confirm that this is all going to be used?
I would believe so. The thing that is more concerning to me is the fact that Saudi Arabia very rarely moves its troops and its military equipment, and then of course Turkey now is really beginning to do the same. So we are talking about two very, very strong military right now in the Middle East that are beginning to move around their troops. And we know that Turkey has been exchanging jabs with Russia, and Russia has even threatened Turkey. That if they continue this path, there is going to be a nuclear confrontation, and so of course, like Larry said, Turkey wants to pull in NATO, which is the smart thing to do, but NATO is not biting. The United States does not want to get involved, dragged into something like that. So we are seeing this thing really beginning to coalesce, gel into a very nasty situation. And then on the other hand, you have China now instigating, North Korea, which is kind of rare to see China coming down hard on North Korea like that. They usually try to, protect North Korea and excuse North Korea. So we are seeing the things happening in several fronts, which is not good at all. Not good at all. When you bring this together with what's going on right now in America, and the violence beginning to stir up, and the political scenario that is getting nastier and nastier, and people beginning, the Republican political party beginning to threaten with a brokered convention. It begins to remind me of the prophecy of Dmitry Duduman, where he was talking about a revolution beginning to America, and then right after that is when the U.S. was going to be attacked by its enemies. And so North Korea, of course, he hates the United States. And then, of course, we are seeing now the militant Muslims, the terrorists, which are already here. And then we are seeing all these other issues going on in the Middle East. And the thing that is the strangest to me, Stewart, and Larry, is that you don't hear Israel much, and we know that Israel is going to be involved. We know that, but somehow it's being left out of the equation right now, which is very, very strange. And that would be something that we need to keep an eye on the next few months.
Yeah. You were talking about the Saudis. Here's a headline for both of you guys. Saudis ready to give Syrian rebels missiles against Russian warplanes and tanks, according to DEPCA files. This would escalate it into war, wouldn't it? I mean, that would be an act of war. If they shot down a Russian airplane, would that not be a prelude to World War? Now, we know from the scriptures, particularly Psalm 2, and I think that's really what we're looking at the base of all the prophecies lays that Psalm 2 war. And it says that the kings of the earth and the rulers get together. So is this scripted? Is this like that Armageddon script? Maybe, Larry, you'd like to comment on that, because the Armageddon script talks about war over in the Middle East. It talks about war over by the Chinese area, and North Korea possibly is involved in it. In that Armageddon script book that was written, or I'm not exactly sure how it came about, but what's your take on this? I mean, if Saudi is going to intervene, not only with troops, but now with missiles, how are we not looking at a world war?
Well, interestingly, basically you are. One of the things that, and of course, I guess you heard that Netanyahu just refused to meet with Obama, but what you're not seeing on your television news and what you're not hearing on your radio news is this is what's going on. Matter of fact, the headline today from Yahoo's News says, Obama's final arrogant, ignorant push for Mideast peace deal. Does Obama's rebuke to Israel and Netanyahu in the Middle East peace deal and preparations to force Israel into a division. And so I think we're finally seeing Obama coming out with his next little, his pen and his phone, and maybe he's sitting on top of the UN. But, you know, what's really going on, I know you just saw Biden rush over to meet with Netanyahu in Israel. What we're hearing in the background is that because that they're trying to force a deal on Israel with the Palestinian state and divide Jerusalem, and Netanyahu's not going along with it, and so now Biden has been sent to threaten Israel with, we will shut off your finances from the United States, we will shut off your worldwide financial system, we will actually stop delivery of the planes you've already ordered and that should have already been delivered. We'll block your arms that you'll need to fight, an invasion, or as the missile attacks begin to come, you won't have the availability. So see where Obama's coming from, and you see the rhetoric that Biden just took to Israel. And now you know why Netanyahu said, I will not meet with Obama.
Okay, so he doesn't meet with Obama. It to me, just looking at it from the outside, I'm seeing that this is all being orchestrated by Obama. He wants a war. We betray Israel by not doing anything about it. They get invaded, and then out comes the peace treaty that we've all wondered about what it is. Is it an Arab coalition treaty? Is it Oslo Accords revived? What is it? How about you, Augusto? What's your take on all that part of it?
Well, I have been hearing Obama making comments about wanting before he leaves office, wanting a treaty to divide Jerusalem. And of course, we know that he has been wanting to be elected to as a chairman of the United Nations, which is, I believe, that's his ultimate goal. I really believe that he is genuinely thinking that he's already done what he came to this country to do. Basically, is the way I see it. He may have a couple of more things to do to wrap things up before he leaves, but his eye is on the UN, on the United Nations, because that is the bigger stage. And so that is, once he gets there, he is able to do what he was not able to do as the U.S. president, and which is kind of hard to imagine. But as the chairman of the United Nations, he would be able to influence the whole globe, the whole world, and especially Israel, and and favor the Muslims. He would be able to favor the Muslims, instead of Israel. So I think that is something that he's really looking very, very intently to. And I don't think we have seen everything yet. I think that he's got a couple of more moves to do before he leaves office. And that young boy that died and was taken to heaven, he said that one of the things he saw was Obama, and he came against Israel. Now he didn't give a lot of details about that, but he called Obama Gog, and And so I really feel like this is something that we need to keep our eyes on Israel, because there's just a lot of movement going on around Israel right now. It's not involving Israel right now, but that could change in a moment. We are seeing a lot of troops from Saudi Arabia being moved. We are seeing threats going back and forth between Russia, Putin, and Turkey. We are seeing Iran now beginning to also, rattle its saber. There's a lot going on in that region right now, which bears watching, because that is a powder keg, and it all revolves around Syria. And of course, we know why. We know why Syria is at the center of this whole thing. It's just a power play. We know that Saudi Arabia wanted to construct an oil pipeline going through Syria to Europe, and we know Putin does not want that, because he wants to sell his oil to Europe. And so we see a power play going on here, and we know that Turkey wants, to control its border. He wants to destroy the what is the name of those people? On the southern border, the military that is fighting the Turks. They want those people destroyed, and they don't care if ISIS. The Kurds. There you go. Yeah, the Kurdish people, and the Kurdish people, they are fighting ISIS. They're doing us a favor, but Turkey does not want the Kurds to win. They want them killed, exterminated. So we see this going on back and forth, and and of course the Kurds are helping Syria to fight ISIS, and so this is a big old mess going on there, and we know that Putin is a strong leader, and he is not going to allow the Turkey or Saudi Arabia to mess with Syria. And we already have seen how Putin has issued a warning to them not to get involved in Syria, or things could get out of hand. He's basically threatened Turkey and Syria with tactical nuclear response if the ground invasion goes on. So these are serious threats we are hearing. This is not just Russia is a superpower. And Turkey and Saudi Arabia have very powerful military. So we are not seeing just a little skirmish here. We're talking about what could escalate into a serious world war.
Okay, having said that, would you think, I know this is kind of an off-the-wall point, Psalm 2 says this is choreographed, that this is all scripted. What would be your comment about that? Because if Netanyahu is not interested in splitting Jerusalem, how are they going to force him to do it without a war, without an invasion? Then Obama can step forward after it's all over. NATO goes in and cleans up the mess. By that time, Obama has probably already taken the United Nations position. And then he can enforce this Oslo or whatever accord it appears to come forward. What do you fellows think of that?
Well, that's very interesting that you said that, Stewart, because that's the New World Order way of or what you call in police work mode of operandi, mode of operating, is they bring chaos, and then they also bring the solution. And it's their solution. And what's interesting, if you look into Obama's eyes a little bit, I suppose you could come up with an idea, and of course I'm surmising, but I guess you could come up with an idea that if you could present a war to start against Israel, then you could also bring the solution to save Israel, or at the last moment maybe, and but you save it with Israel being forced to divide Jerusalem and do exactly what you wanted from the first place. So it sounds like a solution to me. Sounds like a chaos or order from chaos that's created and its agenda.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because it's kind of hard for most people, I think, to believe, and I like Augusto's comment on that. our leaders would meet in their back rooms, smoking their cigars and drinking their whiskey, deliberately plotting and scripting all of this for the end result of Obama being escalated to Secretary General of the United Nations, so he's king of the world, basically. He, at that point, if he is head of the United Nations, does he not have the military of the United States plus NATO on his side at that point? And with the technology that they've got, I can understand, I guess, where he could easily rise virtually overnight to become king of the world. What say you, Augusto?
No, I think you're right. I think that has been his goal from the beginning. You know, remember from his inauguration back in 2008. He reconstructed the temple of Jupiter, and that he used that as a backdrop for his speech. And what possessed this man to do that? And then remember, the first few years he was speaking very strange language. He's gotten away from that now, but he's speaking very strange language. And I believe that has always been his goal. The first couple of years, I mean, the very first year when he became president, he won the Nobel Peace Prize, even though he had done nothing. And so they just worshipped him like a messiah, and not just in America, but in many parts of the world. So people have forgotten all about that, and I think that's still very, very strong. I think that's still something we need to we need to remember those things. And his goal, he's not just he's done with America. He's done with the United States. I believe that his work is just about done here. Like I said before, he may have a couple more things to do yet, but his next goal, his sight now is on the world stage. And his eyes are set on Israel. I mean, I hate to put it like that, but I believe his eyes are set on Israel. And why would an American president be so intent in dividing Jerusalem and and coming against Israel like he has, unless there was an agenda there? I mean, he has said from the beginning that the time would come when he would have to make a decision, and when that time came, he would side with the Muslims.
Yes.
So I mean, it's obvious at this stage of the game that this man is a Muslim. He's not a Christian. He has shown no signs of being a Christian. He has even referred to his Muslim faith. So And there are many things, Stewart and Larry, that people have forgotten that happened. They did happen. At the very beginning when he became president, many references were made to him as the Messiah. He was spoken of in messianic terms. And I mean, these are things that, it happened and everybody forgot about it, but let's remember these things. These things did not happen by chance. They happened for a reason. And I believe that we are getting closer now to the fulfillment of many of these things. And he has been keeping quiet lately. But the things that have been happening behind the scenes, let's not forget many of the things that happened. I mean, how mysteriously Scalia passed away. He was found dead overnight, right at the point when right after he had gotten a clean bill of health, and many of these things that we just we got to connect the dots and see what is going on. The other thing that bothers me is he has been asked several times about Trump, the presidential candidate for the Republican Party. He's aspiring to be the president. And when asked about Trump, I noticed his response, and his response was very, very, very strong and very firm. And he basically said, that will never happen. Now, what does this man know that makes him say this with such conviction and with such certainty? Because, of course, anybody can say a comment like, nah, he will never get there, But when the President of the United States, which his words carry weight, okay? He can't. The President of the United States, he just can't go and start saying things like that. When he says something of that nature, he will never be president, and he says it with conviction. What does he know that we don't know?
Let me insert something here real quick, if I can, Stewart.
Go ahead, Larry.
I just wanted to mention, just before your show started tonight, they canceled the Trump rally in Chicago because of massive protests that came against it. And this is interesting. The protesters had the free speech to shut down the free speech of Trump and his voters. And I'm looking on, if you get a chance to go to yahoo.com, the front page news, there is a book there that says,
hello, Larry? Augusto, are you still there?
I'm still here, but I don't hear Larry. I think he may have dropped.
Okay, maybe we can get him back. I think that I agree with Larry and you both. There's something very strange, and you may remember, Augusto, that at the I think it was either just after he was elected, he went to Chicago and they had a big rally, and they were flying the communist flags at the rally, and they were showing them right on TV.
Well, Chicago is his home turf, is Obama's home turf, and of course that's where he became who he is. That's where he did all his activities, and that's where he has a lot of his friends in Chicago. That's where the mafia is in Chicago, and so I knew that this rally was going to have problems for Trump, because the Black Lives Matter group and all these other groups, they're going to come out strong against him. And again, I go back to the words of Dimitri Duduman, which I believe were straight from the Lord, where he was told that there was going to be civil unrest, a revolution, were his words, in America, that were going to be brought on by the communists. Those are his words. And by the way, also, Stewart, the Lord showed me that a few years ago, and I don't know if I had a chance to share that with you, but I had an experience some years back where I was shown. Okay, I was taken to a very old library. I don't know where the library was located. I don't even know if it was on this earth or if it was on a heavenly library. But I saw a lot of documents, and I saw basically a lot of scrolls that are dated back hundreds, thousands of years, and I began to read these things. I was sitting around a table with three other men. Okay, three other men, and they were basically explaining to me many of these things that were going to that had happened in the past, and how the seed of the serpent, okay, these people, okay, the seed of the devil, which are the elite, the rich men of the earth, these people that go back a long time from the line of Cain, how they had always tried to kill and to destroy the seed of the Lord, the seed of God, and how they had always manipulated world events, and how they were doing it even now. And so, I was really engrossed in reading all of these things, in just going through all of this thing, when all of a sudden, one of the three men comes up to me, and he basically looks at me in the eye and says this word to me, okay? There is a revolution coming to America. And then he paused, and then he said, this will usher, when this happens, it will usher in the New World Order. Okay? So, yeah. So I know that this is going to happen. A revolution is going to happen, just like Dmitri Duduman was told by the angel of the Lord as well. And so I said all that to say this, Stewart. What I see happening right now in politics, I see this man, Trump, that the establishment, okay, the elite establishment, has come together to stop him at all costs. Whatever it takes to stop him. He is a threat. He is a threat to the elite. He is a threat to the establishment because he is not one of them. Even Newt Gingrich said so himself, that he was an outsider.
Yeah. Larry, are you back on?
Yeah. Did I talk very long before I was thrown out?
Yeah, you were thrown out. You probably were censored. But go ahead with what you were going to say. Augusto was talking about, what Dmitri Duduman had to say about revolution in the nation. And you were, I can't remember, but go ahead and say what you were talking about.
Well, what I was trying to talk about, I'll see if I stay on this time when I mention this. I was indicating that breaking news is going out about how they have stopped the Trump rally in Chicago because of the Black Lives Matter protest, and I was telling people to go to yahoo.com news. Right at the top of the news right now is an incredible image of a T-shirt there. It says Muslims United Against Trump. And there was a lot of chatter in the last week or so in the background about Black Lives Matter and the Muslims and possibly agents from ISIS within the U.S. that were linking up to bring chaos and stop Trump's movement.
Okay, now there's been a lot of articles recently from fairly heavy sources, including Glenn Beck, who more or less said he'd kill Trump by stabbing him.
Yeah.
And there have been a lot of other little articles showing up from mainstream alternative news that Trump has got a hit on him. They're going to assassinate him if they can't stop him any other way. So I got a question for you guys. If Trump was assassinated, what would be the reaction of the American people, irrespective of whether they're liberal or conservative? What do you think their reaction would be? Would this be what could start Dmitri Duduman's concept of revolution?
Well,
I mean, I hate to talk about it, but
I think it's going to happen before then, Stewart. Let me amplify what I just said and clarify. If this, for example, right now they're talking about a brokered convention, okay, which means they want to take, if Trump does not get the minimum electoral votes that are necessary for him to become the nominee, right, of the Republican Party, they want to have a brokered convention, which basically what it means, for the people that don't know what it means, is this is basically what it means. these candidates have gone through weeks and months, of debates, and the American public has been listening to them, watching them, taking notes, casting votes, going to the caucuses, all these things. And now basically what they're saying is that when they get to this brokered convention, all of that is going to be for nothing. And they're going to come out and say, well, we think that this particular candidate, and it could be Mitt Romney, it could be Marco Rubio, it could be anybody that they want. This candidate is the one that we believe is the one that we should that should represent the Republican Party. Well, if they do that, if these people have the audacity to do that and go against the will of the American people, I really think that this could spark a revolution right there and unrest throughout the land, because the American people right now, they are at a point where they are not going to take that. I don't believe they're going to take that at this point in time. So, there are several voices out there that are telling the Republican establishment, you guys better accept the will of the people, because what's going on right now is a coup d'etat, okay, a political coup d'etat, if you will. What's going on right now is like a revolution instead of being with bullets, is being done with ballots.
And it's being done by leaders themselves, authority against authority.
That's right. That's
Jeremiah
right.
talked about. Wow. So let's say Trump succeeds, however, and gets through that. Would the establishment, would the rulers and the leaders eliminate him?
No.
Would they have the audacity to do it? Do you think?
Well, that's their MO. I mean, that is their MO. That's their MO. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say more than that.
Well, Larry, you've seen some airplane crashes, and you've had some things that you know about with yours. He's senator? I can't think of his name. Are you there, Larry?
Yeah. Who are you talking about?
I can't think of his name. He's your senator down there, either in Oklahoma or where you were.
Inhofe,
yes. Well, didn't he have an airplane close call?
Oh, absolutely, and that was connected with Bill Clinton. Absolutely. After he had a run-in with Bill Clinton, then actually when he would land at some of the airports I was at, the police would guard his planes, because his planes began to have, FBI began to investigate troubles, and airplanes can't have those kind of troubles, and not without tampering. And so anyway, and this is one thing, Stewart, that I have just said from day one. When you and I were talking, and I guess you could almost say parroting Jeremiah, talking about Jeremiah 50:51, we said clearly, and I really said that I didn't foresee the total drowning. I think that the American people are under such a deluge of denial that, I don't know if they'll stand up or not. Now, I know, like Augusto, I think a lot of them are getting tired. They're getting tired of being tired of what's being forced down their throat. But I still have said and stood by that the rulers against rulers was really a key verse in Jeremiah, indicating how so-called Babylon begins to come apart at the seams, a revolution or a civil war that begins with the rulers fighting. And I still believe that's what we're going to see.
Well, if the Republican establishment on the inside, the elite part of that, obviously don't want anything to do with Trump, and so then you've got the underlings, the Tea Party type people who are, in the middle of trying to force their will. So in one sense, you have infighting among the Republicans, infighting among the Democrats. You've got infighting in the White House versus the Supreme Court, et cetera, et cetera. It does seem like we are watching slowly the disintegration of the United States that way. And I would like to also bring up the Kenyan prophecy. Augusto, are you familiar with the Kenyan prophecy?
Yes, I have read it. It's it looks like it is coming to pass very, very precisely, and because that is exactly what this president has done. He has totally disseminated or decimated the capabilities of this country, the economy. Look at the economy. Look at the military. Look at the infrastructure. Look at the jobs, at the industries that have been that have been taken overseas, that have been exported overseas. Look at the infiltration of the Muslims into this nation. Look at the invasion, and he has not gotten his ways. I mean, he hasn't gotten everything he wanted. He wanted to bring all these immigrants from Syria and the Muslims, and only God knows how many more he wanted to bring in. And the borders are porous. He hasn't lifted a finger. And then and then he had the audacity to say, a few days ago that he's not responsible for the strife and the tensions, the racial tensions that we are experiencing in this country at the moment. I mean, can you believe the audacity of this man? How he just says things that are just, straight out lies. I have never seen anything like that.
Well, that sort of confirms what the Lord had to say about Satan, doesn't it? He's a murderer and a liar from the beginning. So
yeah.
I think, as Larry has said, if his mouth is moving, he's lying.
Absolutely. What's interesting, though, is the fact, and you and I, all of us have talked, Stewart and Augusto and I, we've shared from the beginning of Obama's move as a messiah almost, or a messiah rating into the office of the president, and his almost 8 years there now. Bill Clinton was nowhere near coated in as much spiritual Teflon as Obama's coated with. Obama has a spiritual coating of Teflon that cannot be scratched, cannot be touched, and you may want to ask Augusto his view on this, but it's almost like Obama came in and the Lord is leaving hands off of Obama until a certain amount of leverage, so to speak, in America has been done, or I could use the term damage has been done, because even right now today, guys, I looked at some polls today across America, and Obama's ratings are very high. They love him. Of course, I know a lot of them are really drunk on that water from Egypt, from the Nile, but called Nile. But it's almost though he's had a spiritual covering for a long time to do his damage, and he has done it.
Well, you're absolutely right, because they can't touch him, and I've often thought, he's more or less now taking the position of a king. We know from prophecy that the king of Babylon in the book of Isaiah, he's the king of Babylon. We can easily prove who America is if people want to really know who it is. And he's called Lucifer. And I did have a dream, and I'm not asking anybody to believe it was from the Lord, but I was teaching prophecy when I don't know where I was, and he walked. Big smile on his face, walked over to me, and I said, "You know you're Lucifer, don't you?" And he said, "Oh, yes," big smile. So, and a lot of Christians, I can't say how many, but a number, have had visions of Obama, and he's been called the lawless one. Now, everybody's looking at overseas, everybody's looking at Europe, everybody's looking at King Charles or whatever. But my take on prophecy, and I'd like your guys' comment on it, is that the rise of Antichrist comes at a time least expected, in a location least expected, and does his dirty work before anybody really realizes who he is. Anybody want to comment on that?
Well, I just want to bring something up, and maybe either you or Larry can confirm this, but I have heard that there is a Muslim belief. I believe it is from the Hadiths, that when this man comes, of course, the Muslims do not call him the Antichrist, but they call him the Mahdi. Okay.
Yes.
But we know the Mahdi is the Antichrist because it fits perfectly what the Antichrist is going to do in the Book of Revelation, the man of lawlessness. And of course, there are others that have said that he is going to be a Muslim or at least have Muslim background. He's not going to be a leader of Europe or anything like that. He's going to have to be able to to relate to the Muslims and also to other religions as well. But the thing that really is interesting is the fact that according to this Muslim belief, that the Mahdi is got to be someone that has been in power, for 7 years when he appears.
Oh, really?
Okay, in a position of power, in a worldly position of a leader of world renown for 7 years. Now, I cannot confirm that, but if somebody can confirm that, I would love to hear, because I have read that and heard that already on a couple of occasions. I have not been able to confirm it, but if that is true, if that comment is true, if that legend is true, if that belief is true, and it comes from the Muslim hadiths, there are not many people out there that could fit that bill.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because J.R. Church, while he was still alive, I think, did some research on Obama, and he can trace himself back, I believe, to Solomon, and he also can be traced, his lineage, to, I think it's Ireland. And you remember the prophecy about Dan, the tribe of Dan, and that Dan would rise up at the end. So if you can tie it in with Dan, if you can try it in with Solomon, you can tie it into the Mahdi, and there have been imams who have said that Obama is the Mahdi. I remember reading that, 3-4 years ago, I think. Larry, do you remember anything like that?
I remember some of that, and what Augusto is saying, if that's true, is, that's rather revealing. I mean, that's really telling information. There's a lot of, background going on, and I guess you could say Muslim prophecy being stirred up or even possibly fulfilled in the Middle East right now, dealing with the Mahdi, as he was talking about, the one that I believe Augusto, they even talk about him climbing out of a well or out of a hole of some kind is how he actually shows up. But, what's interesting about Obama is the fact that, his past is like a black hole. It's like a dark, dry well. There's no bottom to it. In other words, Obama's past is dark.
Well, you're absolutely right. I think Augusto knows that, nobody knows where he actually came from. I mean, his grandmother claims he was born in Kenya. Everybody in Europe, evidently, and over there knows he was born in Kenya. So there's another aspect to it, but we really don't know what's been done. We know that, I can't remember who it was, but he was a businessman, went over to Russia, and he attended some sort of a elegant, deal where they were closing business deals. I don't know what you call those meetings because I never get invited to them. He said a lady came up to him and said, well, don't you realize you're going to have a black president? He's been groomed. And he's a communist. He's a Marxist.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, the 1912 prophecy of the Kenyan guy was that a tall, black, handsome man would rise up at the time of the end, and he would be a son of Kenya. Well, lo and behold, what do we got? My only question has always been, we know Isaiah calls him Lucifer, but is Lucifer and Antichrist one and the same, or are they different entities? Any comments on that?
Well, I'll tell you what, too. If you go to drudgereport.com right now, it's a very telling photograph of Obama right at the top. If you go to drudgereport.com, and it says under the caption under the Obama image, it says, "Keys, please." It says, "Obama makes case for access to all devices." That almost would answer some of your questions right there, I believe.
Oh, he wants total surveillance.
Yeah.
Augusto. Well, the other thing that I think that we need to pay attention to this man, because the Bible says that when the Antichrist, when this man would come, he would be a man of dark sayings, and I don't know if people can agree with what I'm about to say, but I have heard this man say some pretty dark sayings. Like what, and everybody laughs when he says these things, but he's dead serious. He's dead serious, and he does not laugh. He may have this smirk, but he does not laugh. And sometimes he even says, "Do you think I'm kidding?" And like one time he was talking about the drones. He was going to send drones, that people better be careful because he was going to send the drones out. That he was going to come after them with a vengeance. And he was going to send the drones, and then the people started laughing. And he said, "Do you think I'm joking?" He said, "I'm not joking." And things like that. When he was when he was talking about where he was born. Many different dark sayings like that. That people laughed, but he was not laughing. And there are some things that we need to pay attention. We don't know much about his, like Larry was saying, his background, and you were saying, Stewart. There are people that have made a comment that his mother was a carrier. In other words, he was when she had him in her womb. No one really is able to pin down who the father is. No one is really to pin down who the father is, and there's a lot there that I'm not able to get into tonight. But the religion of the rising sun, he practices that, and the mother was a very, very strong follower of that religion. And if you look at the photo of the leader of the religion of the rising sun, okay? If you look at his picture, there is a striking resemblance to Barack Obama. A striking resemblance. So there are.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, people need to take a look at that, because the resemblance is striking. It's like they're identical. How can that be?
Well, and you had the sheriff. Well, is that Utah or Nevada? Remember, and he sent a team over to investigate the birth certificate. And of course, everybody laughs and said, this birth certificate controversy, it's all garbage. There's nothing to it. He was born exactly where he says he was. He's an American citizen, blah, blah, blah. Well, the sheriff said that's not true at all, that the birth certificate presented was an absolute fraud. It's easy to prove it was a fraud. but it's like you were saying, Obama just makes fun of it. In fact, I was watching a video where he was making fun of it, and he said, "This is where I was really born," and they played a clip from the animals from Africa. What was it? That it was a cartoon about the king of the lions. I'm just dropping it now. Anyway, the clip that they played was where all the animals were bowing down to him, and he said,
"The Lion King."
That was his birth certificate, his real birth. And then he laughed. Anybody want to comment on that?
Stewart, I believe you're referring to the Lion King, I think is the name of that.
Yes. Yep.
All the animals. But I'll tell you what, too, interestingly, there's been a lot of background chatter during that same time when this was going on. You remember the military guy that was over passports killed in a mysterious death, and other people were killed. But there are also reports that I've heard that says Netanyahu knows the truth. Of course, we've never heard anything from Netanyahu on the issue, but I've heard that he knows the truth about Obama from the beginning.
Well, I would have to say probably a lot of the people in Europe certainly know that he was born in Kenya. His grandmother even came out and said she was present at his birth. And then they shut her up real quick. But doesn't it seem like the Lord would do this? I mean, I suppose a lot of people wouldn't think the Lord had much of a sense of humor, but it's very dry, let's put it that way. But would he not end America in such a fashion as we have a president, nobody knows where he came from, nobody knows who he is, nobody wants to believe that he could be Lucifer or that the Antichrist could even possibly come out of America. That's just simply a no-no. It's ridiculous. It could never happen. But that's exactly what the Bible says. Jesus said the whole thing comes about by a giant deception.
Yeah.
Very true.
So it really makes you wonder exactly what we're dealing with here when we're dealing with this guy. I mean, he's very lovable. He's very likable. I can understand. He's kind of like Bill Clinton. People say he's a very likable, lovable type of person until you cross him. Then I guess you get laid out on a railroad track or something, but or have a heart attack. Let's get back to Scalia. His death was very, very key, was it not, to some things that are coming up in the Supreme Court?
Well,
I think so.
Things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Obamacare, it was very connected. His death was very connected with his rulings on Obamacare and that TPP package, and also I heard the EPA shutdown of a lot of American energy. So, it was vital. His death was a blow to America's way of life, basically, I guess you could say. I know a lot of people disagree with that, but that's how I see it.
Well, of course, it won't roll out right away. I've often said that when a big event occurs, it's not the event itself; it's the ripple effects after the event, and that can take some time. But Scalia was probably one of the last holdouts, and maybe, do you think that could have been a message to other Supreme Court justices? Be careful. It can happen to you. I mean, I don't think there's any question he was murdered.
I think so. I definitely think so. There was an interview by Chris Wallace when he interviewed Scalia. A few months ago, I think it was last year, where Chris Wallace was basically asking Scalia if he took Obama's words, and they showed a clip, where Obama spoke to the Supreme Court justices and told them, I expect you to to approve this, to pass this, and he spoke other words along those lines, and then Chris Wallace asked Scalia, "Do you think that was a veiled threat to you and the other justices?" And Scalia kind of laughed that off and said, "No, I don't think so." He says, I didn't even know that he had said that, and so I'm glad you told me, but and then he basically said something along the lines of, he cannot. How can he says, what can he do to me? These were Scalia's words. What can he do to me? Well, there's now this happened, so we see what could be done to him.
Yeah, that would be a very subtle warning that you're alive one minute and then you end up with a pillow over your head and you're dead for no particular reason. Larry, have you heard any more about the investigation? Are they actually going to investigate this, or has that been dropped?
No, that's all taken care of. There was no investigation, and as I shared with you, in law enforcement, an unattended death is never just blown away like they blew this death away. This was all took care of. It was took care of from high up. Matter of fact, maybe I'm a little conspiracy nut. Okay, that's fine. But, I'll tell you what, the handling of getting rid of his body and getting him into his funeral and into the ground and any evidence that might, it reminded me so much, guys, of the JFK affair.
Yes. A lot of people don't realize that Kennedy, and this kind of touches on UFOs, but it also touches on the Denver Mint. A lot of people don't realize that John Kennedy had gone to the Denver Mint and had them print United States notes, and he started with a $2 bill. It didn't say Federal Reserve note. It said United States note. And it was shortly after that he met his demise.
Yeah, and they're illegal. You can't possess one, and I guarantee you can't find one either. Not now.
Yeah, they're kind of vanished, I guess. But, they have their ways, and that kind of touches on the UFO concept and the arrival, because he was going, as I understand it, he was going to share the UFO technology with the Soviets at the time. Had either of you heard about that?
No, I have not.
There's some background talk I've heard in that area, but I don't have any details on it particularly. But I understand what you're saying, and there were some reports of some secret meetings. And I know that on Art Bell years ago, there were some whistleblowers talking about some secret meetings that he was supposed to have set up, but never was able to get to talk about the UFO situation.
Well, what I read was that, and it was quite interesting. I can't remember what website it was on, but they actually had some of the documents, which were coded but pointed exactly to the assassination of John Kennedy. And they were very, very high up in the government, and they were using weather-related phrases to talk about that Kennedy was going to, I think, stop the investigations and stop the black budget operations and try to bring the UFO black technologies that were being hidden from people and, stop it and bring it back under our Constitution and under control. And you probably both remember Eisenhower, and he said, watch out for the military-industrial complex, because they're the ones who are basically going to take over if you don't stop them. And one of his, I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say there to insert right where you just said what you said. If you'll remember in some of Stan Deo's revelation, so to speak, of what occurred with him, he was involved in secret black project anti-gravity, and he also, I know, witnessed some time experiments, time travel. But one of the things that he said, remember, I know y'all have all heard some of his interviews, was that he was with one group, one of the earlier groups, and then another group they took it over. It was all like a coup. It was like a black project coup of some kind, and another group with more power took it. And so and I expect probably he was referring to the Eisenhower concern. Was the military-industrial complex was working together with this technology.
Well, if they can take over. If you have the technology and you have the weapons, then I think it's like the Lord says, who can make war with the beast? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we got to look at some of the Russian stuff, and they're more advanced than we are. Some of the weapons they've introduced over there.
Yeah, that's been shocking.
There's a lot of things that we need to pay attention to, little things, that have happened. All these things have happened, and but it happens. People may talk about it for a day or two, and then it goes away. And I mean, look what happened with the Scalia thing. It's disappeared. Nobody talks about it anymore. But for example, one of the things that is very interesting is the carpet, the new carpet that was placed at the White House. Did you all see how that carpet looks? Usually every president has the opportunity to place new carpet there with the the Oval Office rug. And everyone chooses like a different eagle, and with a different style, a different color, and so forth. Well, Obama chose for his style, for the Oval Office carpet. I don't know if you all saw it, but what he chose, it does not look like an eagle. It looks like a phoenix bird.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're right. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it looks like a phoenix bird, which was very, very interesting to me. Why he would choose that? There's another incident too that I want to bring out because again, I am not saying that he is the Antichrist or whatever, but we need to keep our eyes open because we need to remember that there is going to be whoever this man is, whoever this man of lawlessness is, okay, or will be, it's not going to be something that is going to be obvious or apparent forever. It's going to be someone that is going to experience a transformation, if you will. It's going to experience a revealing. It's going to experience a moment where it will take place, where he will become what he was not. Okay, the beast that was and is not. So we need to understand that this is something that it's not like people think. It's not like it's somebody there in Europe or it's somebody here. No, this individual is going to become that entity, that Abaddon. The Bible says that ascends out of the bottomless pit, the son of perdition, that ascends out of the bottomless pit. Of course, there's been a lot of talk with CERN that they have opened the bottomless pit, or they are trying to anyways, and some say that they have already achieved it. Well, there is a very interesting dream that Obama had. He wrote it in the Dreams from My Father. It's a book, his book that he wrote. And it goes something like this, okay? It says, I finally fell asleep, and I dreamed that I was walking along a village road. Children dressed only in strings of beads played in front of a round huts, and several old men waved to me as I passed. But as I went further along, I began to notice that people were looking behind me fearfully, rushing into their huts as I passed. I heard the growl of a leopard and started to run into the forest, tripping over roots and stumps and vines until at least I couldn't run any longer and fell to my knees in the middle of a bright clearing. Panting for breath, I turned around to see the day turn night. Now notice that. That is very, very interesting. The day turned night. And we've talked about the darkness and the coming darkness, okay? But it's very interesting what he experienced. The day turned night. And a giant figure looming as tall as the trees, okay? Now, obviously he's talking about an angelic presence, whether it is an angel or a fallen angel or, it's definitely a giant figure. It says, looming as tall as trees, wearing only a loincloth and ghostly mask. In other words, this was a fallen angel. He was a very an entity that was growling, that was big, and that had a ghostly mask. Okay, the lifeless eyes bored into me. Again, that speaks of demonic presence. And I heard a thunderous voice saying only that it was time. And my entire body began to shake violently with a sound as if I were breaking apart. I jerked up in a sweat, hitting my head against the wall lamp that struck out over the bunk. In the darkness, my heart slowly evened itself, and I could not get back to sleep again. This is from The Dreams of My Father, page 372. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that sounds... so, he's a man of darkness, maybe.
Well, the thing that really grabs me about this particular dream he had was that this entity told him, okay, he says that his eyes bored into him and said in a thunderous voice, it was time.
So this is well, the Bible says that Antichrist comes at the appointed time. So maybe that's what it was referring to.
Well, the other thing I see very interesting here, Stewart and Larry, is he says, I heard the growl of a leopard and started to run. Now, we need to remember that dreams and all and vision, and especially dreams, are very symbolic. Okay, and I don't know if you remember when Nelson Mandela died, and I mean everybody and his brother went to his funeral, and one of the things that a lot of people missed about Nelson Mandela was that he was referred to as the leopard, and he had a leopard. The symbol for Nelson Mandela was a leopard. And one of the things that was said was that on his coffin, there was the skin of a leopard was laid over his coffin, which, very interestingly, is in Denver International Airport. One of the murals depicting the end, the times of the end, had a leopard that was dying, or a leopard that was dead, and there was a coffin, and there was the leopard skin right on that coffin, and there was, or I can't remember if there was a leopard behind the coffin or it was a leopard skin on the coffin in that mural in Denver International Airport, and this was associated in that mural with end-time events that were also depicted in the mural. And, of course, Nelson Mandela died, when was that, like about 3 years ago, 3 years ago, 4.
Not that long ago, and I know there were some people that said that when he died, then things were going to start to break loose.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know. People say all kinds of things, and you really don't know whether any of it's true. So you just take it with a grain of salt. But speaking about the leopard, doesn't Iran fly a flag that has a leopard on it? Larry, do you know? I don't. I know
I'm
one
trying
of
to
those.
remember. Yeah, I'm not sure which one does. One of the Muslim nations does. I can't remember exactly. I wanted to mention this though. After Augusto had talked about his the dream that apparently Obama something that glowed or something angelic or whatever. Tom Horn just posted a new headline, and I'd like both of you guys may want to talk about this. And it may fit into the headline on Drudge today about Obama wanting access to all electronic devices. All that word "all" really sticks out. Let me read this headline. It says from Skywatch TV that March 11th, Tom Horn warns of IARPA. I guess that's EARPA. In other words, which stands for Intelligence Advanced Research Projects Activity. Tom Horn also warns the moment of a strong AI, which we know that's artificial intelligence. I'll repeat that. The moment of a strong AI singularity comes online is when the image of the beast, Revelation 13:15, and states that U.S. government has launched a $100 million Apollo project, is what they call it, to reach the strong AI. I wonder, Augusto, if the connection with this glowing being, is this an AI individual, an image of an AI, or something like Serge Menace that warned about years ago?
Well, I could be. I'm not sure. Were you referring to the dream that he had on the book Dreams of My Father?
Yes, and you said there was something big and glowing, angelic-like, and I'm wondering if this was, I know Stewart, Serge Menace and what he talked
Yes.
about, and how that might tie into some appearing intelligent beings appears, at the time we're talking about, time frame.
Well,
Yeah,
what I got,
Yeah,
go ahead, Stewart.
Well, I was just going to say, Serge Menace, of course, had an untimely passing. But this business of Project Bluebeam and whatnot, it's advanced technology is basically what it is. And I think it was Carl Sagan who said that advanced technology to the uninitiated would seem like miracles from the gods. And that people would literally bow down. Now, the Bible does say that mankind bows down and licks the boot, literally almost, of Satan. In order to get the human race to bow down to Satan, to that degree, requires a fair amount of preparation and, what do we say, psychological persuasion that they need to do this. So, he brought in the UFOs, he brought in the technology of three-dimensional holographic that would appear in the atmosphere, and it was all a deception. It was a total deception. But they've been laying this groundwork on the UFOs and alien contact now for a long, long time. In fact, I just read an article. I wish I could find it. I was looking for it. Where a UFO landed, and they said giants got out of it, and they were dressed in Roman sort of gladiator gear, and that the people that witnessed it went up and bowed down and worshipped them.
Oh.
This was a fairly recent event. So when you start tying all of this stuff together, with what Obama's doing. I got a thing right here, Obama to use United Nations to divide Jerusalem.
Right.
Did you read that one?
Yeah, that's the one I was referring to at the beginning of the program. But I really believe, and again, going back to that dream that he shared in that book, Dreams from My Father, what I got from that when I read that was that in this dream that he had, apparently when he probably was still there in Nairobi, Kenya, because that's where he grew up. This entity, which it appears like an ungodly principality, okay, or the demonic power. He talks about the lifeless eyes that bored into him. He talks about the ghostly mask. He talks about the giant figure. That's a large entity. That's a demonic power, principality, and power. And how he said with a thunderous voice, it was time. It is time. Well, what that tells me is that there is an assignment for this man, for Obama, that was revealed to him back then, and that's basically what he was sharing was, he was told when he was young, this entity told him, it is time, basically, he said his body began to shake violently when he heard that, as if he was breaking apart. Well, that to me speaks of some kind of possession, some kind of a transformation that took place back then. And, again, I can't help but think that he again, I'm not saying it is him because he could be somebody else, but there are a lot of signs and very, very, telltale signs pointing to very, very strange things that have happened in the life of this man. And like we shared before, nobody knows anything about his past. And, nobody knows where he came from. Nobody has his records. Nobody knows anything. Nobody has access to his medical information. Why? What is it about this man that they are so afraid that anybody, takes a look into it? Could it be his DNA? I don't know. They have made comments that say he resembles King Akhenaten.
Yes.
That that a picture or a bust of King Akhenaten has been shown, and right next to one of Obama, and the similarities are striking.
Well, there was
Stewart, could this man be a clone? Could this man be a hybrid?
Well, I'll tell you, there was a fellow by the name of Dr. Peter Bader. Now, this sounds really off the wall because he died, 10, 15 years ago. But before that, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when I was starting the ministry and rolling everything out for information, Dr. Peter Bader claimed that they were cloning even back then. And I really believe that. I mean, you talk to Stan Deo and some of these guys that are on the inside, the technologies that they have developed are so far beyond what the American public even knows about. And you watch these movies. If they say if you see it on the screen, they say it already happened yesterday. In other words, this is how the Illuminati work. They present like Star Trek stuff, but a lot of it is actually true. It's not science fiction. They've already been there. They've already done it. And so it does make you wonder, and I think that's why Eisenhower made the remarks he did. You let this military-industrial complex go, where they've privatized all this backwards engineering from UFO crashes, et cetera, They have the weapons that now the remark of the Lord in Revelation, who can make war with the beast, is absolutely truth. Who can make war with them? They've been allowed to develop all this stuff off the books. Nobody can stop them. Nobody even knows. In fact, John Lear, when he was interviewed by Art Bell, he said that all of this stuff is so compartmentalized now that only the ones at the very top know what's really going on. So, yes, he could be a clone. He could be. And it sounds bizarre. It sounds ridiculous.
The other thing is this. The other thing from the dream is this, and I want to share this so maybe you and Larry can maybe share your insights with it. But the fact, when he talks about he started to run away from this evil entity, right? He runs into the forest. Okay, the growl. Okay, this entity growls, and it's a predator. It's an evil entity coming for him. Basically, tells him it's time, right? So he starts running into the forest. He starts tripping over roots and stumps and vines to escape this entity. Okay, and it's also like he's trying to run away from the leopard, because remember, the beginning was like a leopard, and the leopard is represented in the book of Daniel and also in the book of Revelation as being a part of the beast, of the body of the beast. And so he starts running until he cannot run any longer and falls on his knees. And when he's no longer able to elude this thing that is pursuing him, okay, and he has to confront basically his fate. And so he is in this bright spot, which is like a clear spot, and there's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to hide. And so I think this is a very telling dream. I like to interpret dreams sometimes, and sometimes the Lord gives me the interpretation of dreams. But he talks about darkness. He's talked about which is evil. And we talked about that. Where the darkness surrounded him, and he could no longer run anymore. And so basically, this giant, this demonic entity, as tall as trees, confronted him, and this is the one that the entity that that we're talking about. This is the devil. This is the devil, or like you mentioned, Stewart, Lucifer, Satan, or Abaddon, Apollyon. So this is an incredibly powerful entity. And basically he bored into him. His eyes just looked into his soul and told him it's time. So I think this is a very, very telling dream that he had, that he doesn't even understand himself, but he's basically talking about the fact that he is going to he cannot escape his destiny, the purpose for what this entity is chasing him. And I think this is going to play out. I mean, some people out there may think I'm crazy, but the fact that his body began to shake violently, as if he was breaking apart, I think this is something that it probably will happen. This is going to haunt him, and he eventually is going to have to yield to this entity that is pursuing him.
Yeah, if he hasn't already.
If he hasn't already.
Because he seems to be very confident. Like Larry was saying, this guy, you talk about Reagan being the Teflon guy, or Bill Clinton being a super Teflon guy. Well, this guy's an ultra super Teflon guy. Nobody can touch him. And the only reason, he's got like 25 impeachable offenses. Nobody touches him. Nobody says a word. And that's got to be either one, they're being warned, hands off, or two, the Lord has his hand on him, and he is God's man of the hour, and he is here to punish the American people for their apostasy, or they're breaking away from the Lord. And that gets you right into Deuteronomy chapter 28. You know, the United States inherited almost all the blessings of Deuteronomy 28. Now we've inherited all the curses. And one of the chief curses, of course, is the economics and the allowing of the bankers to take over the Federal Reserve System, which they have now destroyed the United States basically. They can pop it anytime they want, and down we go. Larry, what do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what, while we're talking about some visions and things, do you mind if I read you a vision someone sent me from Jerusalem? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely not. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go
ahead. Because I do want to get your both of you guys' opinion on this, and I'm not going to say who it's from, but it's someone that I've known a long time that really loves the Lord, and this individual is a military officer also, and goes to the Temple Mount at times in the area of the Wailing Wall and prays and sometimes has experiences. And let me read this experience because this was shocking. And what's interesting now is this individual didn't know that I was going to do this, but I sent this individual an email about a week ago and said, if you go to the Wailing Wall or the prayer wall and you pray there, I said, let me know what you're shown. Now, nobody knew this but me and the one I contacted in Israel. And I got an email back yesterday from the individual. Now, here's the vision. This individual did go in Jerusalem to the mount there and prayed at the Wailing Wall. And I'm just going to read this, and when I get through, I'll ask you guys may want to interpret it, or if there is an interpretation. It says, Larry said, I had a vision, and I don't know if this is for me or for you, that I had been praying about moving and said, so please tell me if this fits or not. Okay, here's the vision. I saw an ancient stone house, much like the old stone houses our forefathers built with river stones, not the ashlars like on the Temple Mount. Around the house was a fence made of the same river stones about 4 feet high. The area inside the fence was spacious but not overly large. I could not see the back, so I'm unsure where this place is in relation to other houses or streets or neighborhoods. The front door was open, and immediately my eyes found a figure standing in the doorway. It was a very tall soldier, maybe 7 feet tall. He was dressed in battle gear from the simple time frame. He just stood at the doorway, dressed and looking out the door as if he was ready to move out into battle at any moment. The scene got strange at this point. I was still looking at the soldier when there was a blue color wash over the scene. The scene was still there, but it looked as if someone draped a see-through blue plastic tarp over it. Then the tarp became red, then white, then the vision disappeared.
Wow.
Amazing.
Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm just waiting on the comment, if you've got any.
Oh, go ahead, Augusto.
Well, I don't know. It's really a very, very interesting. It's definitely it's pointing into a personage. It's the personage. Can you repeat the last part again, Larry? The last part of that?
Said I was still looking at the soldier when there was a blue color wash over the scene. The scene was still there, but it looked as if someone draped a see-through blue plastic tarp over it. Then the tarp became red, then white, then the vision disappeared. And you know what I thought about was, is that an angel standing in that doorway, and you've got the colors blue and red and then white? Mm-hmm. Is that America? Judgment
yes.
on America or war?
That's what I was going to say, those three colors. Yeah.
So we're looking at a war. Now, I was reading an article, and I don't know if it was a vision or what it was, but the guys said that he was told that war would start in the south and then it would move to the north through all of Israel, and that many people were going to die, and it was not going to be stopped. It was a judgment. Now, that almost goes along with what we were talking about in the first hour. Is it possible that what Obama's got planned is an invasion of Israel, and then later on he can step forward and save Israel and become the Messiah Savior?
Well, that's pretty interesting what you just said, because I'm reading here, an article here that the Jews, they're expecting, the anti-Messiah during the end times. They're expecting a world leader that they called Armilus, Armilus. And according to this, it says 2 Jewish scholars back in May of 2007 predicted that Obama would be elected president of the United States despite his unfavorable chances back then, because he fit the description of Armilus. And they based their prediction on the gematria of his name. And so Armilus is supposed to be identified by these signs, okay? I'm going to read you the signs. Number 1, he's going to be a man unsuitable to rule, and he will be brought into power in the last days. 2, his ego will know no bounds. 3, people will be taken in by his charisma and power of speech. 4, he will claim to be a Christian, but he is not. 5, he will be representative of an evil world body which will claim to represent the true Messiah of Israel, Islam. Now, now 6, he will set himself up as a Messiah figure. And, of course, we talked about this already earlier in the program. And then he says, Armilus, will be the one who attacks Israel and Jerusalem. So that is a pretty interesting article that that the Jews also are expecting sort of their anti-Messiah, which they call Armilus. And of course, again, let me remind of what that young boy, I think his name was Nathan, the boy that died, the Jewish boy that died, and was taken to heaven, and he said that Obama was Gog. He was the one that was going to attack Israel, and he was going to do horrible things. And the rabbi that was interviewing him said, "Are you referring to Barack Obama?" He said, "Yes." So, what do you think about that?
Well, I guess my comment would be it fits in with everything that I've been shown myself, particularly that dream where he came in and he flat out said, "Yeah, I know I'm Lucifer." There was no hesitation in his voice or demeanor or anything. He was smiling, and he's got a wonderful smile, and that was that was it. Then I woke up and I always thought, well, maybe the Lord's trying to show me for sure who this guy is. My only question has always been, is Lucifer and Antichrist the same entity? And I still don't know that. But Larry, what's your take on that?
I'll tell you, I think that's interesting, and especially everything you pointed out, Stewart. I just got an email from a guy named Don. I think you know him. And in the email it said, Larry, and said, and I'll tell you guys what he said. He said, Larry, red, white, and blue are the colors of the Russian Federation flag. And Don knows that because he has kinfolks in Ukraine, so he knows the Russian colors, and I never thought of that. Maybe that's a clue.
Wow. That is interesting. Augusto, what do you think of that?
Well, it could be. It could be a combination of both. Of course, we know that Russia is going to be one of the nations that will attack the United States in the end times. We know that. We know that it's going to be Russia and China. Mostly Russia will do the eastern seaboard, and China will do the western seaboard. And this will happen in the midst of cataclysmic events, where this nation is going to be decimated. This nation is going to be destroyed, completely destroyed. But Israel is going to be it's going to be damaged very, very, very badly. Maybe not completely destroyed, but it's going to be annihilated, according to many visions of people that have seen what's going to come, and also from scriptures. It talks about. Of course, we know Jerusalem will be protected. We know Jerusalem will be protected because that is the city of God that he wants intact. He wants to keep that city intact. But there's going to be a lot of horrible things happening. If this nuclear war takes place, and it could happen this year, and we could see the beginning of the end. We could see everything that prophets have been seeing for ages, and many seers, and modern day prophets, men of God, have seen. We could be seeing that this year and next year easily, and if this thing with Trump continues, and we'll just have to wait and see. But if this thing continues, and he keeps gathering momentum, and he wins Florida, and then he wins Ohio, and this elite continue to try to stop him, they may just, these people are really mad. They're mad, and they maybe they will overplay their hand and think that they can still, do whatever they want and take Trump off and put whoever they want in there. I mean, look at the things these people are saying. I mean, did you guys see what the big Bush did? The sign he did during that conference, I think it was the one at Houston. Did you see the sign that he did? Like, when he went with his hand like around the neck, like to knock off Trump. I mean, this is the kind of thing that we are seeing, which is incredible.
Well, it is, because the guy is running for president. But see, they got very brave when they did Kennedy in.
Oh yeah.
And, that gave them bravado. Okay, we can get rid of Kennedy, and that was no problem. And then we fixed the investigations, and that means we can really get rid of anybody we want. Now, was it No Eyes of Phoenix Rising, Larry, or the Inuit or Hopi, where they talked about that assassinations would begin? And at first, I think it was leaders against leaders, and then it was in America especially. It would be the government would start to assassinate citizens, and then the citizens would get sick of putting up with that, and they would start assassinating government people. In other words, it's one of God's ways, I guess, of making a whole nation implode. But Augusto's absolutely right. I mean, it is amazing that we're seeing all these articles about that he could be assassinated. And if Obama comes out and says, well, he's not going to be president, like Augusto said, how does he know that? Unless they've already got the plans.
I think,
and really, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Stewart, I think they've already got the plans, and now this is my take, and I'd like you guys' opinions on that. There's a few wild cards in the deck. I use that terminology not because I'm a gambler particularly or anything, but that's just my terminology. What's interesting, though, we got the Joker out of the deck of cards in Obama, and he came out of a black hole, and nobody cared, and he's been president almost 8 years now. But we've got a guy named Trump, Donald Trump, that even the rich men are rejecting. Black Lives Matter, the Muslims, and all of that tonight, according to reports, they say now they've stopped Trump, that they're not going to accept him in this country as president, and that's the end of it. And I don't think it is, but this is my point, okay? This is my point, and an answer to your question, Stewart. I think that in the end times, and what I see is there's someone behind the scenes playing the wild cards, if you know what I'm saying, and I believe that's who we call creator. There's some wild cards in the deck of these end times, and I've mentioned to you guys that one of them I knew was Netanyahu, and Stewart's talked about Netanyahu for years, and I mentioned another one is Putin. But you know what? The last few days I have come to conclude that Donald Trump is also one of these wild cards in the deck. What do you think?
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, go ahead, Augusto.
I agree. I totally agree with that, Larry. I do believe that he's a wild card. I believe that, one of the things that people need to understand is, and of course, people are talking about, this guy doesn't have any morals. This guy is, is this and this guy is that. Fine. I understand all that. But what if this guy is a wild card, like you say, Larry? What if this guy is going to be used by the Lord to topple this ungodly system? This is something that people need to really think about and pray about. The people, they talk and they say, well, God has got to raise up a good man, a godly man, a Christian man, otherwise there's no hope. That is not true. Let's look at the Bible. Look at history. God has always, the Creator has always raised up heathen men to topple ungodly systems and to save His people. Look at Cyrus, from Medo-Persia. How the Lord used him to restore Israel, to restore His people. So we cannot be obtuse, and we cannot be so hard-headed that we say God cannot use a man like Trump. Why couldn't He? We have to pray. We have to remain open to these things. And I totally agree with you, Larry. I think he could be a wild card. He could be the one that the Lord uses to upset the apple cart of these people.
Yeah, he's definitely a wild card. There was a fellow that asked the Lord about Trump. Kept asking the Lord, what's the deal here with this guy? And the Lord responded finally and said, I'm using Trump to bring to the American people what's really going on behind the scenes, which is what He does. He comes right out and says it. He says, yeah, I know all these guys. I've dealt with them. And he does not hesitate to more or less call them crooks. So it does make you wonder exactly who he is. Now, there is a fellow that's done some research, and Sorcher Fall, whoever that is, everybody wonders who they are, but they've been running a bunch of articles about Trump and his ties to Masonry.
Mm-hmm.
And what is going on is a war between the old establishment and whom evidently Masonry wants to replace. In other words, there's a literal Masonic war going on between two factions within Masonry. And, I did a little research. I haven't had much time to do it, but everybody said, well, he's not a Mason, you can't find him anywhere. Well, that's not true. He was listed in Boston, and I think it's Scottish Rite Masonry, as being a Mason. So that part of it may be true, maybe not true. But even if he is, he could very easily be a wild card. The people that know him claim he's very honest, he's very upfront, The guy is going to lose millions of dollars billions, if they don't stop him. If he can't stop them, because they plan to bring the economy down. And that's the easiest way to get the American people to submit is to bring the economy down.
Mm-hmm.
Any
I
comments?
agree.
And that also is the easiest way to control God's people, is to destroy the economy where they can't function.
Yeah. Boy.
Yeah. See, this guy is the only one, and I have said this before, and he keeps saying the same thing himself. He's the only one that he cannot be bought because he doesn't need their money. He's very, very rich. He's got a lot of money, so he doesn't need to take the money from these people, from the super PACs and these people that are the ones, the big pharma and all these people, the special interests. They are the ones that pay the politicians, for their expensive, political runs at towards the White House. So once they get there, they are owned lock, stock, and barrel, and they are owned by also the elite, this established media, which basically tells them what to do and what not to do. Now this guy is threatening to upset the whole system because he's not one of them. He's an outsider. I mean, a real outsider who is not going to be beholden to any of their whatever they have to say. He's not going to do what they say, and so he's going to jeopardize everything that these people have been doing now for the last decades, for the last maybe 100 years, 200 years. They have been methodically, slowly, reaching this point where they're now ready to usher in their system in 2016. That's the plan. 2016, 2017. They want to have their microchipping of every American by 2017. They want to have their cashless society. I mean, I was recently, to Houston, Texas, to do a conference, and I was going to pay my luggage, right? Where you have to pay the fee for the bag, and I reached for my wallet, to pay the fee. I think it's $25, and when I was going to pay with cash, the lady told me, "We don't accept cash." I said, "Excuse me, you don't accept the greenbacks?" She said, "No, we don't accept cash anymore. We only take credit cards." And, this is already begun. I go to rent a car, they don't accept cash. In Europe, they don't accept cash many places. Anyway, this is where they're heading. So when this guy is he's threatening. He's threatening to become the president of the United States and to set up. He's just going to upset the whole apple cart, where these people will not be able to achieve their goals, their plans, and they are scared. They are terrified that this man could actually become president. So, they're going to do whatever they can. I mean, did you guys hear what Rubio is saying today? He is telling his people, okay, the people that are going to vote for Rubio in Ohio, he's telling them not to vote for him, for Rubio, to vote for Kasich, so that Kasich wins Ohio, so that Trump does not get that state. I mean, have you ever has any of you ever heard such a thing ever in the history of politics of this country?
No.
I heard that
Can
today.
I read something here?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
I was just going to mention, I did hear what Augusto was just talking about, and even the news people were shocked by this, and they say it's simply a ploy to stop Trump. The whole system is trying to stop Trump, who I'm calling the wild card in the deck.
Well, here's a short couple of paragraphs from Searcher Falls, so take it with a grain of salt. Barely 3 months after taking office, this report continues, President John F. Kennedy announced his attack upon the Freemasons in a 27 April 1961 significantly worded speech before the American Newspaper Publishers Association, voicing his opposition to secret societies, which coincided with the appointment of his brother, Robert F. Kennedy, to post of U.S. Attorney General, after which he, Robert, launched an all-out attack against Freemason mafia forces that were created in the 19th century. The Freemason leaders from Europe, Mazzini, had migrated to America in the early 20th century. Now, here's something that's interesting. With Freemason Donald Trump, presidential opponent Senator Ted Cruz, now openly and publicly questioning Trump's ties to the mafia, as these secrets are never allowed to be revealed to ordinary people, the report concludes a much more lethal level has now been ascended in this ongoing coup d'etat, whose outcome will not only affect the United States, but the entire world, too. So that ties right into what Augusto said. It ties right into Obama becoming the Secretary General of the United Nations. They don't have any options, do they? Don't they have to stop him one way or another?
Well, what's interesting, too, is Trump also is, the media has been astonished with two things. You know, he says he can work with Israel, and he also says he could work with Putin. And now I know it's not making news, but they're astonished at those comments. And all that does, guys, it seems to say, well, there's the wild cards, Netanyahu, Putin, and Trump. I mean, this is strange.
More than a little strange, I think. I mean, we're watching something now that is deadly. Before we close out, we got about 3 minutes left. Augusto, how can people get a hold of you and your website, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, thank you, Stewart. It's very easy. Our website is theappearance.com, just like that, theappearance.com, and they can go there and they can browse through the website. There's a lot of interesting things there, and they can contact us if they so desire.
Okay, Larry.
The easiest way to reach my blog and to keep up with daily news or news flashes or really anything that's breaking is to go to larrywtaylor.org. That's larrywtaylor.org. And just go there anytime you want to and then check the latest news and reports.
Okay. Now, I want to close with one thing here, and I found this article, and I just want your comments. Earth may be a 1 in 700 quintillion kind of place. In other words, it's a very unique planet. Doesn't that sound like Isaiah? I created the earth to be inhabited. I did not create it in vain. What say you guys?
Oh, yeah. I agree. I totally agree. This is a very special planet created by the Creator. And I do believe that we are an example to the whole universe. I really believe that. I really believe that we are an example. Everything that is happening on this planet is being used as an example for the whole universe.
Larry.
Oh, absolutely. I have to agree, Stewart, with what Augusto said. I think that this planet was a location that the Creator chose for the Adamic race, and whether we know it or not, recordings of what's gone on this planet since Adam has been ongoing.
Yes, I second both of you guys. And, it's interesting that this comes from a scientific article. In case, we got listeners that probably don't believe in the Bible, but here's science verifying exactly what the Bible says. So I just wanted to close out with that. I wanted to thank both of you for coming on, and we'll have to do this again. People really love these kind of shows.
Amen.
So,
anytime, Stewart.
Good. Sounds
all
good.
righty.
God bless you guys.
All right. Well, good night, guys. We'll see you later on.